Oh, hospital porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Herpanwo TV. Right, I'm on this cold, snowy morning. I am at Grenoble Road in Oxford. There we are, see, Grenoble Road. And that there is the Kassam Stadium, which is Oxford United's ground, basically. Famous horseshoe-shaped stands there. I think there was originally going to be a fourth terrace to make it more conventional four-sided ground, but they sort of ran out of money. Although, if you ask Ellis Taylor, there's a reason basically why this ground is horseshoe-shaped. It's significant there. Anyway, so no, it's an impressive modern building. Oxford United moved there a few years ago from their former ground at the Manor in Headington, which is getting a bit old. It's quite small as well. This one's a bit bigger. And if we go around here, you can see there's these offices here. Those are the offices of Oxford United. It's called the Kassam Stadium because it was built by the owner of Oxford United, Firoz Kassam, who's kind of he's kind of a local Richard Branson, really. He's a kind of very sort of rich multi-millionaire who lives near here, and he immodestly named it after himself. Although it took a long time to build, actually, because there was financial trouble and stuff. It sort of like fell into disrepair for a while. Anyway, the reason I brought you to this location is not to give you a history of a sort of like football team of varying success, shall we say. I brought you here to discuss something that's happened at a football ground, which is very significant. I suppose it could happen at this one too, but it didn't happen here. It happened in Italy, in Florence, and it happened not now. It happened 69 years ago. What happened was, several people have brought this to my attention, right, and I didn't know about it. You don't find it in any of the UFO literature. I've not seen it in any UFO books, all right, but what happened was it's recently sort of been published and put on the net, although it was reported in the local media at the time, and for local sort of ufologists in the area, it's quite a well-known case. So I'm not sure why I haven't heard about it, because believe me, I've read a lot of UFO literature. And I wrote an article on Herpanwo Voice about this. If you go to Herpanwo Voice, link in the description box as always, you'll see where I've actually spoken about this. It also includes a little picture I've done as well. So the event took place on October the 27th, 1954 in Florence, Italy. And what it was actually a mass multiple witness UFO sighting. And it happened at the famous Stadio Artemio Franchi, which is the home ground of the famous club Fiorentina, who've enjoyed slightly more success than Oxford United, it has to be said. So I'm not being disloyal, it's just a fact. Now if you go to the Herpanwo Voice article, you'll see my picture. Now it's a sort of my own personal artist's impression of what happened that day. I use the word artist in its broadest possible sense, naturally. I'm not an Alex Gray, shall we say. But I think it's a very, very significant case. What happened was, now the ground, you know, now today it doubles up as a rugby ground, and it's a lot bigger than it used to be. It's been renovated several times. So the picture actually is inaccurate in that sense as well, because the photo I use is one of the modern Stadio Artemio Franchi, which is bigger and has been renovated several times since the UFO incident. Now, of course, even if my first ever UFO book, which I bought when I was a kid, or I was given when I was a kid, it said at the time 1954 was a big year for UFOs. There was all across the world, they were being seen everywhere, and there were more sightings in Europe, in Italy and other places as well. Now what happened was there was a midweek reserve match between Fiorentina and a neighbouring rival club called Pistoiese. Apologies if there are any Italians watching and I pronounce these words wrong, I can't speak Italian. Basically it was nice weather, it was autumnal evening. Something which happens a lot in Italy, a lot of nice weather, less so often in Britain, it must be said. Most midweek reserve matches at this ground, usually you wrap up like this, and the weather's pretty much like this. But basically, what happened next though was a very, very unusual thing in both countries. What happened was, a group of unidentified flying objects flew in very quickly, stopped and hovered above the stadium. They hovered in the air above the stadium, like, it's like, if you can imagine it here, you're sitting in these stands here, and basically they just hover above the stadium. It's really quite remarkable. Now, there are many, many witnesses. Like I said, they were described as being ovoid, that's like an egg-shaped UFO, and cigar-shaped, and these are common shapes for UFOs, but there was more than one object. What happened was everyone, the players, the referees, all the people in the stand, there were 10,000 spectators, they all stopped and they just stood up. Players, crowd, everyone just staring at the sky in silence. And they just gaped at this spectacle. It must have been an amazing sight. It must have been incredible. The witnesses include the president of Fiorentina's Supporters Association. So he's no sort of like fringe UFO nutcase. But not only that, one of the players was a guy called Ardicchio Magnini. Again, apologies if that's the wrong pronunciation. Now he is the 5th most capped player in Italian history. He starred in the World Cup. He actually played in the World Cup that same year. Now he's a very, very famous footballer in Italian football history. So he's no one fringe. He's someone quite important. He's someone who'd have nothing to gain from making this up and an awful lot to lose. What's more, other players have been interviewed and they back up the testimony of Magnini and the other witnesses. The Pistoiese players also were witnessed the event. Now the problem is, you always get this with ufology, right? There's a very, very long period between the event taking place and the reports coming out. I mean, a good example is Roswell, which basically there was a 30-year gap between the event happening and the reports coming out. In other cases, such as the Aurora, there was a 70-year time gap. Others, like the Gateshead incident, again, you know, getting on for 70 years. I mean, this is the big problem. I mean, in that time, you see witnesses, they get old, their memory fades, they die. I mean, probably most of the people who saw that match, I say this was 69 years ago, most of them are probably dead now. So that is a recurring problem with UFOs, UFO stories. But I must say, you know, the fact that there was these multiple witnesses is really quite remarkable. Now I'm wondering if there were maybe more witnesses from other places outside the football ground. That's my next step. This is what I'm interested in. Now, you see, because this is not the first major mass urban sighting that I've ever occurred to. I mean, as most of you know, in 1997 there was another incident in Phoenix, Arizona, USA. Now that's a city about the same size as Florence, 1.5 million people. So it's two urban centres of about the same size. So that's just really quite, so basically what happened in Phoenix was that was covered up. The UFO was covered up. The only footage, there was footage broadcast on the news that wasn't terribly impressive. There was probably other people filmed it and those videos never saw the light of day. Fife Symington, the governor of Arizona, as most of you know, was instrumental in this cover-up, and he later confessed. Although the word confession has never been used, it should be. The question you've got to ask is, if Fife Symington confessed, how many others didn't? How many other people involved in these cover-ups did not confess? As I said, like, I'd be really interested to know how many other people were involved in this, how many other people saw it, both inside the ground and outside the ground. As I said, it's a long time ago, so this is a problem, you know? Now, of course, if something like this happened today, it would be a different matter, because firstly, most football matches, or some of them, nearly all of them, are televised. All the major ones are televised. So there'd be TV cameras everywhere. There'll be people in the grounds with mobile phones and other devices that could record things. Now, television was around in Italy in 1954. The service had just been resumed after World War II and the fall of Mussolini. But at that time, this particular match was not televised. This Fiorentina Pistoiese match. So there's no TV reports of it. There is a sort of reconstruction made on film, but it's not, you know, it's not genuine. There are no genuine photographs of this event at all. I'd say in those days, portable cameras were harder to get hold of, ones you could just slip into your pocket. So there's no photographic evidence of this event, unfortunately. Sorry about the weather. It's getting a bit now. It's starting to hailstone. You know, we had snow, now we've got hail. Now, the good news is BBC Sport did cover it. There's no shelter around here. Where am I going to go? Oh, sod it. The BBC Sport did cover this. They mentioned it on their website. They mentioned it in their radio show. So you can find it on BBC Sport. And there is a link in the article which I write, including other things, including my picture of the my reconstruction, my artist's impression of the event. So you can find that all in the link in the description box. Now, it includes an interview with a famous Florentine ufologist. I can't remember his name. He's in the radio show. I should have made a note of his name. It'd be a little point though, because I'd probably mispronounce. I would, I would pronounce it right, but misspell it in this case. I'm not good with foreign languages, except for a few: Welsh, Dutch, a couple of others. But he said something interesting. He said that strange precipitation fell. And quite appropriately, we're getting some not so strange precipitation at the moment. But he said that angel hair, this is what it's been called, you see, that's what it's known as in UFO lore. But it wasn't a popular part of the UFO image at the time. What it is very, very, material falls from the sky at the time the UFOs are sighted, presumably from the objects themselves. Which is very, very light fibres, fine fibres. And they land on the ground, they very quickly evaporate, rather like snow melting. Or, you know, they seem, it's almost like candy floss. It actually resembles some of the material that falls from chemtrails. Now, that's a really, really interesting thing. Angel hair, you know. I'm going to take a walk around here so we can get a look at this building from the other side. Now, this all brings on to the subject, you know, where it comes to mass urban sightings of UFO events. See, UFOs, people always think they only appear over sort of like some poor sort of West Country yokel, or some hillbilly and devil's arsehole Nevada. You know, that's not true. UFOs appear everywhere. Now, the thing about it is only a small percentage of the Earth's surface, this is a common misconception, only a small percentage of the Earth's surface is actually inhabited densely by humans. 70% of the Earth's surface is sea. Of the remaining 30% of land surface, over half of that has less than one person per square mile on average. So the reason UFOs often appear in remote areas is because basically most of the world is remote, but they do appear in urban areas. Now, Phoenix is a good example. Now, the fact of the matter is, if you can cover up a UFO site in Phoenix, you can cover it up in Florence, you can cover it up anywhere. But it's not just, it may not just be cover, it may just not just be actual active cover-ups on the part of the authorities that causes these various events. It could actually be something more subtle and a more cultural kind of control that prevents people from acknowledging that something happened. Because it doesn't matter if 10,000, 100,000 people, a million people can see something. It's like in Phoenix, there were hundreds of thousands of witnesses to this event. I mean, it's literally the biggest mass witness UFO sighting ever recorded, I think. Except perhaps Mexico City and a couple of others, I don't know, but that's arguable. But possibly the same thing happened in Florence. Lots of people saw these objects outside the ground as well as in it. But it could be there's a sort of psychological, cultural block on our parts which says, well, If these things are so unusual, maybe they just can't exist. And so it's very easy to pretend that maybe they just didn't happen. It's a very, very tricky situation. It's a very, very tricky issue, this, because you're dealing with, basically, it's a sort of like statement of mass psychology. This is like a contentious kind of issue. But on the part of the UFOs themselves, it's got to be said, you know, that it's not something that could happen by accident, right? You know, obviously they wanted to communicate with people, all right? This is why they did it. Either that or they're big-time Fiorentina fans. I tell you what, I mean, that's the question. I mean, you've got to ask that question, have you? Are intelligent entities from some high-tech intergalactic or interdimensional civilization going to fly through a portal or millions of light years and hover over Oxford United and watch them get thrashed by Swindon Town? I don't think so, somehow. I'm sorry if there are any Hughes fans watching this, but I'm just being honest. Sorry. Yeah, they were big-time Fiorentina fans. But obviously it was not something that could happen accidentally. These objects, they can't just lose their way and sort of like think, well, oh dear, where are we? We didn't mean to come here. Oh my God, there's loads of people down there looking at us. It was some form of attempt at communication. And people often say, well, why don't they just show themselves? Well, they do show themselves, but they don't show themselves. They seem to be... See, UFOs, I mean, UFOs may not be a single phenomenon. They may be our generic term for a collection of phenomena, and a collection of different situations and things which might have very, very different sort of like agendas, very different ideas. They don't. Sometimes they do hide, and other times they don't. And this is the point. I mean, I think we're dealing with a mind, an intelligence, a consciousness that we have no concept of. We don't know how it works, how it thinks. We can't anthropomorphize these creatures. And this is what a lot of skeptics do. They say, well, how come they fly all these light years? And they go down in some field in Wiltshire and make a few patterns in the corn. And they abduct some wide-eyed yokel and stick an anal probe in him, and then let him, an anal probe into him, and then let him go. Doesn't make sense. Well, of course it doesn't make sense, because we're putting ourselves in their shoes, which is what anthropomorphizing means. And it's unwise. I think we're dealing with a phenomenon that thinks and therefore behaves outside anything that we would consider as sensible. And the only way we could ever know what they're thinking, maybe, I mean, unless we can find some way to dialogue with these beings at some point. As some do. I mean, some people have dialogue with them, the contactees. But unless we can find some way to have a major dialogue with them, you know, there's no way of knowing what they're thinking unless we are one. You have to just reincarnate as one, you know? Well, here we are at the Gassam Stadium in Oxford. There's the famous Oxford United Bull there. And just when I finished filming, the snow has stopped. Isn't that typical? Huh. Thank you for watching, everyone. This has been Hapanwo TV. I have been Ben Emlyn Jones, and you've been a wonderful audience. Hospital Port, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order.